I want to talk about people going back to the movies this year because this something interesting is happening. You wrote about this recently, and I'm wondering, one, why people, in your view, are going back to the movies, and two, whether or not this is sustainable.
First one is tricky to answer. The good slate of movies, things that people were very excited about. So you had probably the highest volume of high caliber summer blockbusters in a long time. We tried to capture the lessons from those in an essay for Business Week, and it's everything from having an appropriate window, delay before or lay between when a movie appears in theaters and when it's available at home, to bringing something fresh and different to the table, which sounds trite and obvious, but Hollywood has been in this pattern of releasing cinematic universes for the last 10 years. And you look at what a lot of things that worked this year are either new movies that haven't been around in 5 or 6 years, something that felt fresh. In terms of whether it's sustainable, I think that just depends on whether Hollywood learns the right lessons from this, right? Are they going to see Obsession and instead just make a million different deals with other YouTube filmmakers? Or are they going to find the right filmmaker and put the right infrastructure around them?
Yeah, and we're still down a lot, right, from the pandemic, Lucas?
Yeah, the sales are off.
In the meantime,
say
the CEO
10-15%. I should say the revenue is off. Mm-hmm. The ticket sales are off considerably more. But one of the reasons why revenue has recovered is higher ticket prices, the popularity of IMAX. One of the things that seems to happen is there's a little bit of enthusiasm around being a cinephile and filmmaking. People who are excited about going to see a Christopher Nolan movie in 70 millimeter or going to see Ryan Coogler in IMAX.
You said, in other words, as you write, being a film nerd is cool again.
Yeah.
I have to say, I haven't seen Odyssey yet, but I want to get to it.
I'm going next week.
I want to get to it in the theater. I really don't want to see it at home.
Yeah, but it's 70 mil or just normal IMAX?
I don't know. What should we do? You've seen it, right?
I saw it in 70 millimeter, no IMAX, which is not what Christopher Nolan would want. I may go see it again in 70 millimeter IMAX, but there are only like 40 screens in the country that have that.
So you come to New York, Lucas.
Okay.
That's what we'll do.
There's still. Hey, listen, what I really think is cool is in this story, Business Week actually polled people, studio chiefs, producers, talent agents, filmmakers, analysts, and diehard filmgoers on the lessons. And one of the things I did think was, I want to go to the first one. Young people still want to go to the theater. So it is interesting. Like we talked about this being kind of cool, but I think we keep thinking that some of these trends, young people are going to be doing things differently, but we still now hear like they weren't going to buy houses. Well, now they are maybe going to buy houses if they can afford them. But same thing for the theater. They're going back.
Yeah, look, there was a feeling that young people would not be going to the movies anymore. And that has, I think, mostly dissipated. That was one of those pandemic era moments where, because of the popularity of video games, because of all these other entertainment offerings at their disposal, people thought that young people had moved on. And I'm still reluctant to say like moviegoing is as popular with young people as it was before. But I think the notion that young people are just not interested in movies was clearly false. They just are interested in particular types of movies. Making Minecraft, which is a property that they love, was something that could get them to go to the theater and get them excited about it.
What about this idea of like the YouTubers starting to get into films and these one-offs? And if they are one-offs, you mentioned Obsession, directed by a 26-year-old YouTuber, Backrooms, directed by a YouTuber. I haven't seen either of these films. I've especially heard about Backrooms. But I'm just curious, Lucas, about what that tells you about where the industry is and if there's like this, there's a new route to the big screen, or if this is just like, this is a, kind of a one-off.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a saying in journalism, three's a trend. And so if you look at this year, you had this movie Iron Lung from a popular YouTuber named Markiplier that he mostly self-distributed earlier this year that did really well for kind of that type of property. And then you had both Backrooms and Obsession. And so you had kind of 3 YouTube adjacent films in a row. It's tricky because there have been filmmakers discovered on YouTube for a decade now, if not more than that. So the notion that there is the crossover potential is not new. But I do think when you have three movies hit in the way that they did at the same time that some legacy franchises like Star Wars or DC Comics underperform. It certainly opened Hollywood's eyes. They were, a lot of producers trying to find the next Reddit meme or 4chan meme that could become a movie, or that next YouTube star. Um, you know, uh, the truth is that each one of these stories is distinct. But I think that for me, the biggest lesson was you took kind of talent and IP that resonated online, that knew how to speak to an audience, and then plugged them into the system in a way that gave them the freedom to sort of stay true to their vision, but had all the intelligence and bells and whistles of a proper Hollywood release. And to me, that's the right formula.
Do you agree that audiences really want happy endings? I mean, I kind of do.
I do.
I do too. I feel like there's enough stuff in this world that kind of stresses me out that when I go home, I want a happy ending.
I think that Hollywood fell in love. Part of this was a result of television, where, you know, particularly after House of Cards on Netflix. It and maybe Breaking Bad, but I'll get back to that. People fell in love with this idea that like nobody had to be likable, and it was fine to make projects about all of these kind of loathsome figures. But if you think back, and this is more television than film, if you think back about the anti-heroes of that first era of the golden age of TV, Tony Soprano, Don Draper, Walter White, from Sopranos, Mad Men, and Breaking Bad, respectively. These were folks who were very flawed and in many cases like kind of despicable, but you were rooting for them. The series did a really good job of making you care about them, and you almost like felt bad, but you couldn't help but kind of want to see them succeed or do well. And I think we tilted too far away from that, where there were projects that were just very dark and bleak and depressing, and where nobody was redeemable. And that it ultimately is going to turn people off. It doesn't mean that everything should be sunshine and rainbows. Look at all the problems in the world around us. And I do think people are craving stories that reflect some of those. But they don't want to walk out of the theater constantly feeling depressed.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk sports and the connection between sports and Hollywood. You reported this week on Bob Iger and Josh Kushner and their huge purchase of more than $12 billion of the LA Lakers. What was your first reaction when you saw these two? Look, we know these guys are close, and Iger's been an advisor to Thrive, but what was your reaction when you saw this duo team up to buy the Lakers?
I mean, my first reaction would involve an expletive that you're not going to want me to say on this show, so I'll just skip that one.
Really?
Let's just say it was a surprise.
Yeah.
I'll leave it a mystery as to which one, which four-letter word. It was a surprise. Mark Walter had bought the Lakers just less than a year ago at this point. And I think Laker fans, which I am, were excited about the idea that the owners of the Dodgers, and the Dodgers have been one of the best-run franchises in all of professional sports since the Guggenheim Group took over, that they would sort of apply that formula and fairy dust to the Lakers, because the Lakers had struggled a little bit the last few years. It's hard in pro sports being owned by kind of a family where their entire net worth is tied up in the team, because they just don't have the resources that some of these massive new ownership groups have. At the same time, my main takeaway was, man, Mark Walter must be in trouble, because there had been reporting by Bloomberg and by others about some of the investigations into his kind of insurance company and how he was moving money around. And I just find it hard to believe, and again, I don't have the inside track on this, but I find it hard to believe that he would sell the team that quickly if there wasn't something precipitating that. If he did, and we've had reporting since then on kind of his need for cash. As for the Kushner-Iger duo, we knew that they were trying to get an NBA team and have been trying to do things in sports. It's a little bit of an odd combination. In particular, like when I think of Bob Iger, he's probably one of the most prominent Clipper fans in Los Angeles. So the idea that he's now going to be the owner and face of the Lakers is a little odd. But we also know that he, as the former CEO of Disney, was sort of looking for that next act in some way to stay in the public eye. And this is a good one for him.
Hey, before we wrap up, just got about a minute or so to go. Bloomberg Screen Time, the live event coming up.
Yeah.
September 30th, October 1st in LA. We're going to be
like
there.
One of our favorites. I think it's fair to say.
It's an incredible event, I have to say. And it all kicks off on the evening of September 30th. Anything you can tee up for us, or how you're thinking about kind of content and the creators of content and how it's delivered and all that good stuff?
I mean, look, we have certainly one of our best lineups yet. We've got a couple of returning champions or guests, Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos and NBCU's Donna Langley. We've got a bunch of new people like Dana Walden from Disney and the head of HBO, Casey Bloys, and Jerry Cardinale, who's involved in one of the biggest shareholders in Paramount. So I'm sure the Paramount Warner fracas will come up quite a bit. We've got one of the mayoral hopefuls in LA, so I imagine Nithya Raman. So I know we're going to talk about sort of production flight leaving Los Angeles and what the city and state can do to leave it or keep it there. We'll talk about AI music with the CEO of Suno, Mikey Schulman, who's someone that my colleague Ashley Carmen and I just profiled. So we'll touch on a lot of different topics.